Hello, everyone. My name is Dan Jonas Roach, and I am the news editor here at the Architects newspaper. I'd like to welcome you all to the seamless integration of real-world context for faster, smarter architectural visualization live webinar, a CE Strong webinar series powered by the Architects newspaper. This webinar is sponsored by D5 Render. This program is registered with the AIA CES for continuing professional education. Questions related to specific materials, methods, and services will be addressed at the conclusion of this presentation. This webinar is recorded and can be easily replayed when re-registered on the same webinar registration page. Please allow 7 business days to process certificate of participation and AIA credit reporting for this presentation. Now, I'd like to introduce you to today's presenter, Jeffrey Espinoza. Jeffrey Espinoza is the design technology consultant at D5 Render with a background in digital design and a strong foundation in architectural design. Jeff applies architectural principles to all aspects of his work. As a CSM, he is dedicated to ensuring users have the best possible experience with the software. Remember to please leave your questions for the speaker in the Q&A button found at the bottom of your Zoom window. Without further ado, Jeffrey Espinoza.
Perfect. Thank you, Dan. Let me go ahead and share my screen. And thank you all for taking the time to join today's webinar, Seamless Integration of Real-World Context for Faster, Smarter Architectural Visualization. I'm Jeffrey Espinoza, a design technology consultant here at D5 Render, and I'll be primarily sharing a couple slides with you before jumping straight into the software and showcasing a few new features built inside of D5 Render. So for today's agenda, we'll be taking a look at why real-world context matters to designers, as well as a new approach to deliver faster, clear visualization within D5 Render, before jumping into a live demo where we'll see how to use it and how it could be helpful. And we'll leave a couple minutes towards the end for any questions that anyone might have, and I'll be more than happy to answer. So why does real-world context matter in design? Well, from the architect's perspective, more detailed site context equals clear visions, more informed design decisions, and faster approvals. Precise geospatial data, especially for large international sites, can be hard or costly to incorporate. So as designers, we all know that our designs are, directly correlated to our built environment and the site context, how the neighboring building casts a shadow inside of our space is all things that we need to start to consider. And so being able to import the site context and our surroundings is really important. And from the client's perspective, having site context means or allows them to easily understand the full scope and potential impact of a project, as well as validating design feasibility against real life conditions. So on the client side, it's not always that they can understand a 2D drawing or a diagram that we might present to them. Oftentimes they need to see that real world rendering or image in order to get a full understanding of what the projects will look like and feel like. So providing them with visualizations as well as visualizations with real world site context matters. And then for firms, site context helps them win more work by showing designs in real world settings, can cost and improve ROI, as well as scale workflows with ready to use site data. So in the following slides, we'll take a look at just some traditional workflows and how they can oftentimes become disconnected, which is not always great for firms that want to standardize workflows and be able to scale rapidly. So here are just a few challenges in traditional workflows. Include adding site context to your renderings can be time consuming, manual 3D site modeling. So sometimes you'll have to model the surrounding site context, or maybe you purchase them and that can lead to inaccuracy with generic geometry, which lacks geographic relevance. So another workflow option that we've seen is maybe importing OpenStreetMap data, which might just be simple extrusions of the surrounding site, which does a great job of like building a relationship between your project and the site, but oftentimes lacks details. There's a lot of disconnected tools. So if you do purchase a model, what are the odds of that purchased model being the right format for your preferred modeling software? Data security risks, you're oftentimes signing up for trials and new memberships, trying to figure out what the best source of accurate site data might be. Inefficient workflows with repeated uploads and edits, ineffective communication. So, you might buy a site context model today, 2 years, 3 years down the road, maybe that site context model is outdated. You still need to go in there and um, make some modeling updates. So again, as we can see here, we can start to paint a picture of just how disconnected being able to import your site model inside of your modeling software or visualization software can be. But what's great is that D5 has thought about this. And so with our new integration with Cesium, you're able to import real geospatial data straight into your visualization scene and software. And so by integrating with Cesium, it helps set the project in its real site location, add more realism to architectural visualization process. And you can always combine that with all of our different AI tools. So one-click atmosphere match helps to instantly create immersive environments with your reference images, as well as built-in AI post-processing helps you create one-click improve realism and transfer to stylized or realistic styles, as well as AI enhanced rendering speeds. So with D5 Render, you can import the real world geospatial context, and you can combine that with our AI tools in order to increase the realism or change the mood lighting. Even though you are importing a geospatial model, it's all within the D5 Render ecosystem. So you can always change the sun path study, develop different shadow studies, and I'll be showcasing that in the demo as well. And you can start to combine this with our many different collaboration tools for simultaneously editing projects, annotating intelligently, and providing rapid feedback, as well as enabling clients and team members to drop comments, images, accelerating feedback and alignment, as well as preset visual styles to ensure firm-wide consistency. So on a firm-wide level, now that you've incorporated your site context into your D5 render scene, this D5 render project can be split up into multiple different work sets so that you can have multiple different designers opening up that same D5 render project on their machines, and they'd all be seeing the same site context. They can all start to make more informed decisions based on like how their building designs affects the site context or vice versa. And this new feature is perfect for whatever types of projects you're working on. It's great for architectural exterior renderings, urban planning and design, cultural heritage and historical architecture, large-scale projects, landscape and environmental design, visualization presentations. So we've heard many use cases from a ton of different designers, ranging from maybe they're developing a new stadium and they need that site context, but that context can oftentimes be pretty large. And so being able to have a piece of software that can handle all that geometry and accuracy is really important, as well as landscape designers who, again, deal with acres of land. This way, now you can import all of that geometry inside of D5 Render pretty seamlessly um, and optimized. So with that, now that we all have a clear understanding of why it matters and how D5 Render has been able to address some of these concerns, we can start to take a look at what the workflow actually looks like. So here I have a simple Revit file. And here the workflow is pretty standard. Just go ahead and hit Start D5, import your model into D5 Render. And then from here, we'll notice a new button called Cesium. So let's just go ahead and open that up. Make sure to import our longitude and latitude coordinates, and then hit Google Photorealistic 3D Tiles and hit Add. And so what's great about this feature is that it's actually pulling the site context information straight from Google. And so you can rest assured that whatever information it's pulling, it's going to be the latest and greatest. It's not like this was being pulled from 5 years back. This is going to be updated based on Google's database. And once this is all imported, you'll see that it comes in as an actual object. So I can always start to move this around, align this where I need it to be. Let's just go ahead and revert the location and start to move this down. And so as you can see, if I just minimize my zoom menu here, we're still running this scene at a pretty comfortable 50 frames per second. And so even though we have all of Illinois and all of planet Earth for that matter streamed into D5 render, I'm not noticing any performance hiccups. And that's because, again, this is all data that's being streamed into D5 render. It's not actual hard-coded data that's going to be using up your computer resources. But, you know, that doesn't mean that we're going to be limited to whatever it's imported. From here, we still have the ability to make some adjustments. So we can always go ahead and start to control the time of day and start to develop those sun path studies or shadow studies. And the other thing you'll notice is that if we look at our building that was brought in from Revit, you might notice that there is an overlapping existing building. And if we wanted to resolve that, we can just go into our section features here, add a section cube, and start to play around with the scaling of that section cube. So let's just go ahead and play around with these settings. So I'm just trying to get the sizing correct, and I'll go ahead and unlink the scaling and start to move that around. And so now we can go ahead and remove some of that cesium context. But as you can see here, it's also gone ahead and removed our building, which we obviously don't want. So all we need to do is just go into visibility on layer and set that to current. And now we're able to completely get rid of that pre-existing building while leaving our main designs or updated designs intact. And so now you can start to see the benefits of this new Cesium integration. All I really needed to import was our Revit building and then go ahead and select our coordinates from Cesium. And just like that, we have a rendering that can be completely rendered out. All we need to do is maybe apply some post AI features to it or styles on top of it, and we can go ahead and present this. So this is just one use case. Let me go ahead and just talk a little bit more about some additional functionality that you have here in this new Cesium integration. So here you'll see that we have a Cesium object in our object list. And so if I expand this, we can take a look at the Google Photorealistic import. And from here, we have a couple different options. So if I am somewhere where there's, low internet, I can set my maximum screen space error to 100. And you'll see that it's going to load in the site context, but it'll just import it at like a lower resolution so that it's not having to use that much bandwidth. But if we're working on like final renderings, then maybe we do just want to set this to 0 so that it imports the highest quality possible into D5 render. We also have our range limit. And so this is where you'd go if you don't want to import all of Cesium or all of planet Earth into D5 render. This is where you might start to just, again, crop out some of that area. And then we have LOD transitions. So if we really start to scale out and start to take a look at our whole scene, so let's just set the fly mode to 200 and we can start to zoom out. At this point, it's not going to render all of our buildings at like the extreme highest resolution. It's going to use something called LODs. And so that's going to be the different levels of details. And so by enabling this, D5 render will start to transition between those LODs. So rather than just having an LOD of 100 go to like the next level of LOD, it'll start to transition those a little bit more evenly. And the other thing to note is that if we go back into Cesium and try to update our coordinates, you will be getting this error message. And this is just something I like to point out because if you ever did want to change or update your location, you will have to click on your object list here and make that update from this window instead. Here you'll see we get the update function. And the great thing about Cesium is that it does have a bunch of different databases by which it pulls site context from. So rather than using Google Photorealistic 3D tiles to pull the site context from, you could use Cesium's own database if you did want to go for that more claymation style OpenStreetMap data import. But let's shift gears for a little bit and start to take a look at a different scene. And I'll just go ahead and delete this import. All right, so as you can see, we have our D5 render scene. Everything that you see in here was brought in through either my modeling tool or D5 render. We have all our different animated cars and vegetation. But if I go back to my main view here, you'll notice that there is a horizon line, and we don't have a lot of site-specific context in here. So again, we're just going to follow the same steps as before. We're just going to go into Cesium and input our updated coordinates in here. So let's do something in San Francisco and hit add. And now again, D5 will start the Cesium import process. So there you can see it's starting to import all of our cityscape. And what's great about this is that we also do get some topography information, as you can see here in the hills. And so we might have our airport in there, and now we can start to play around with the actual location settings. And now we can zoom into our original view, and you'll notice that now we do have more of a horizon line here that we can start to like hide and enable. And so what's great about this feature is that now you can also start to mix and blend whatever is actual D5 render geometry or geometry imported from your model, um, as well as blending it with geometry that was brought in over from Cesium. And we can get that cohesive look because this is all being affected by whatever environmental settings we have here, which is again another drawback of, mixing all these different file types together. Sometimes you might mix your rendering with some drone photography, and now you got to figure out how to make those both look pretty cohesive. And so the other thing I'll mention here to wrap up this demo is the ability to also use our AI post-processing features with D5 render, or sorry, with this Cesium integration. So if we click on AI post-processing, it'll show me all my previously rendered images, and then I can go ahead and click on any one of these examples. So here are just a few different renderings that I've done. And so as you can see, once you start to get to that more eye level view, that's when you'll notice that there's a significant like contrast between the quality of D5 render's geometry as well as the Cesium import, since it is using Google to import this geometry. Um, but what you can do is, what I found to work the best is the smart retouch feature. You can go ahead, hit smart retouch, and then just affect the Cesium import, and it'll do a light pass, and it'll do its best to try to preserve the original quality of your rendering while still adding some more details. So you can notice that especially in these buildings here, the lines are a lot crisper, a lot less blurry. And it did go ahead and like make some updates to the trees here in the foreground. Not as drastic as like the actual buildings, but it did do some modifications. Now, if you did want to further enhance this, you can give AI a lot more freedom. So you can go into AI style transfer, realistic, and you can select something like spring or autumn, and you can even go ahead and upload your own reference image. And then the AI will take more control or more liberties towards your image and go ahead and fill in some of these details. So here you'll see the AI style transfer. And now if we zoom in down here, you'll see that we got a lot more details. The trees look a lot more lifelike, while, still retaining most of the geometry inside of our scene intact. And so you can always play around with some of like the post AI features in order to get that true photorealistic quality and marketable renderings. And so, now we've taken a look at how simple it is to start to import some of that site context straight into D5 render, where all you might have is just like a simple 3D model. But then we've also looked at it on the flip side. What if we have a lot of the foreground modeled in, but we still want to import some of that Cesium integration? Now you can start to mix and blend the two. So now I can still get that eye level view while still being able to import the Cesium context in the background. And so just to reiterate the real benefits of this new feature inside of D5 Render, it can really help to accelerate your workflow, bring real world context into your scene instantly, no manual modeling needed, saving significant time, one-click production within D5 Render. So AI presets, auto-optimize Cesium data into cinematic photorealistic visuals fast, instantly toggle seasons, lighting, and climate in 3D model, which is actually something that we didn't talk about in the demo. But what's great about being able to import your geospatial into D5 render is that you can also start to enable some like environmental presets like snow and rain and have your site context respond to that, as well as being able to render out videos as well, not just still images. It's client-friendly collaboration. So D5 plus Cesium enables clients to drop comments, images, and hint in immersive showreel tours, accelerate feedback and alignment, scalable global data access, real-time cloud-based data sets, no downloads, no security concerns, better presentations, faster wins, cost cutting on outsourcing speeds up projects and win more bids with realistic presentations. And so, yeah, that's actually something that we didn't talk about too much during this demo. So if I just pull up my web browser, one of the other features that we rolled out with our 2.11 release is also the ability to create these XR tours, which are really powerful when used with Cesium. So now all you need to do is just share a link with the client, and they can open this up on any machine, whether it be their iPhone or mobile device. And now they can start to pan, and orbit around the 3D model. And so again, you can see that we have just these two towers, which were brought in from my modeling software, and then everything else that you see here is through Cesium. And we can also start to annotate these guys and add some still images, as well as any external link callouts. And so this really does help to create a more immersive presentation style rather than just doing a still rendering. You can create these orbitable models. You might add some external links, which this one points to a video, but maybe the external link that you're presenting points to, maybe it points to a virtual tour that was also developed from within D5 Render. And so from here, you can start to enable comments and annotations all from within the D5 Render ecosystem. And so here are just a few quotes and things that we've been hearing from our clients. This new Cesium integration definitely cuts on time since you won't stress much when doing the surrounding environment. It's a great addition that makes scenes feel more realistic. This integration is a very useful feature for inserting projects into real-world environments. The resulting quality is impressive combined with AI, and we really need it for every project. And so with that, I did want to open up the floor for any time that we have remaining here just to answer any questions that anyone might have on D5 Render in general, Teams, as well as this new Cesium integration. And if you'd like, you can also go ahead and scan this QR code here on the left, help fill out a quick survey. Any information that you provide really does help us improve our software. So with that, I'll be taking a look at the comments for any questions that anyone might have.
Jeffrey, do you want to select the questions that you respond to, or do you want me to start offering some?
Yeah, you can start offering some. I'm not really seeing many in the comment section here.
Okay.
Mhm.
So there's one from Catherine. I have not used D5 render, but is it possible to get a street/ground level view of a site with Cesium, or will the view always be elevated?
Yeah, so you can definitely get ground level views. Again, the quality of those ground level views will be limited by Google. So if you've ever done a Google ground level view, you've noticed that they're not the best in quality. So as you can see here, the quality does start to diminish a little bit, but then that's when you can use some of our AI post-processing features like the AI style transfer or smart retouch in order to fill in some of these lower details here.
Great. Does Cesium require a secondary subscription?
Yes, so what we've done with D5 Render is we've integrated with Cesium, so they are a third-party platform, so you will need to create an account with them. Once you have an account with them, you can pretty easily start to stream in their data. When it comes to their subscription pricing, that's something that you'll have to look at their pricing information. I believe they do have a free tier, but again, that's something that'll have to be done on the Cesium side.
Cool. Is Cesium coming to Pro?
Yeah, so our team has been considering that heavily. So by the next software update, I believe, or timeline's still a bit unclear, but there are plans to move that to Pro as well.
Um, can you talk, how good is the ability to trim out existing content so you can drop in your model?
Yeah, so right now, in order to crop out existing content, you do have to use those section tools. You could start to like if you had like an unusual site lot or site pattern, then that's when you can start to like duplicate these section cuts and provide multiple different section cuts. But at this time, that's the only way to carve out some of that site context. But our team is always exploring for better approaches, better workflows that'll make it a bit more intuitive.
Cool. Can you talk about cost? How much does it cost to use Cesium?
Again, that's something that I'm not too sure about. That'll be done on the Cesium side, but I do believe that they do have a free version.
Cool. Question from Robert. How is the site integration detail when you get beyond an urban environment, i.e. trees, mountains, and rivers?
Right. So a lot of these features can be enhanced with like our AI. And so like if you had any questions about like does Cesium have any site information on my specific site, you can always go into Google, type in the address, see if Google has any 3D geometry on it, and if it does, then you can import that into D5 render. And there are a few different like tips and tricks that you can do once that model is imported into D5 render to elevate it. So one of them, the most obvious one, is to just run a quick AI pass. The other one might be to add in a section box, but maybe make it larger than what your scene is, so they can then start to add in some of your own D5 render trees. So that way you're using D5 render trees rather than the Cesium integration. The other thing you can do is maybe add a plane where your river or lake is, and just go ahead and expand it, make sure it covers the whole lake. And so now it is just like it's a geometry or an object in your scene that you can go ahead and apply different textures to. So here I've just gone ahead and applied a plane. And so if this were over my river or water feature, I just set that to water, so that now my cesium water does have some sort of like reflection, and it's reflecting the surfaces here.
Does CCM use heavy internet data or require fast internet?
I think you'll need reasonable internet connection. If you go into Google and you're able to import their, or you're able to view the Google Earth models, then you're probably going to be able to import that into D5 render as well.
Great. Um, Lanella said, I'm sorry if I missed your answer to this question, but if you pay for D5 Pro, will CCM be included in the subscription?
Again, that's something that you're going to have to go into Cesium's website to fix. So what we do is we provide you access to Cesium's database. And so first off, you're going to need to get a Cesium account. And so Cesium does offer different free and paid plans. And so depending on the plan that you have with Cesium is going to be the amount of, it's going to be directly reflecting inside of like what you're able to import from D5 render.
Cool. Henry was wondering if you could show us the example with snow weather effect that you
Yeah.
mentioned earlier in the webinar.
Yeah. So let me go ahead and delete this. And so now I'll just zoom in at ground level. And so if we scroll down to precipitation, we can go ahead and enable that. And you'll see that we already got some water in here. Let's increase the puddle size. We can also add some snow. And so as you can see here, this is all going to be completely responsive on our weathering effects here inside of D5 render. And if you wanted to enhance this look and feel, you can always go into our AI post processing and set this to winter. So we can go into winter and hit AI style transfer. And so this part will take a bit of time to render out just because it's uploading it to our servers and making the modifications. But these are the two options here. You can either do that real time in the tool itself, or you can do that inside of AI post processing.
There's a question from Christian. When is the next update scheduled?
Um, Unfortunately, I don't have a clear timeline on that. I think that'll probably be maybe like end of this year, early next year. Again, pretty loose timeline here.
Cool.
And I saw something about, so does the section box not hide your imported model along with the cesium content? And that's right. So like if you, so what you, the workflow here is you'd create a cesium layer. And within the cesium layer, this is where you're importing that cesium object. And this is also where you're adding your section cube. And so on the right here, you'll see that we have this property value and we can set visibility on layer to current. This way, it'll only carve out your Cesium model rather than your main model brought in through your design tool. So again, just make sure to create a Cesium layer, import your Cesium object, add a section cube, and set that section cube to current.
A question from Samantha. I use a plugin that allows me to import Google Earth files into my modeling software. Is CCM basically the same thing?
In a way, yes. The only difference there is like I believe that when you import the geometry into Blender, it's actual geometry that lives on your computer resources, it's taking up computer resources. So the larger your site context, then the heavier the scene file. Whereas D5 render, this is all being streamed into D5. So no matter how big of like a site area you import into D5 render, it's not going to affect your computer performance. Again, because it's all being streamed.
Um, Looks like most of the questions that we have been answered in the chat. Um, does anyone have any more questions for Jeffrey that haven't yet been answered?
Yeah, I see one more question here in the chat. It says, if we have to show night view in our master plan, does Cesium support this and all data into night lighting? So great question. If we go back into D5 render, unfortunately, all the materials here are baked into our geometry. So you can't really go ahead and change any of these materials. So what you can do is you can render this out, go into AI post processing. So from here, you can go ahead and set this to nighttime, and then it'll use AI to turn this into a night scene with, all our, maybe like the building facade here will have some lights turned on and off, and it'll start to fill in those gaps. So here is this winter scene that we were doing earlier. And you'll see how it did affect this in order to make this look like more of like a winter scene. Uh, so two more questions I'm seeing here is, so this is not creating 3D tiles streaming in. It is creating the 3D tile. So like if I were to look at an aerial view, I think we can start to see some of like where the tiling occurs right there. So again, since it is streaming in those tiles, that's how we can get a pretty smooth performance. Does Cesium affect the rendering process? I usually work on interiors, but I actually need landscape views through the windows. Um, Again, you can do this for interiors as well. Um, all of this would be visible from within an interior. And if you wanted to, you can just add a section cube box on top of your interior so that, none of the cesium geometry is overlapping with your interior.
There's a question. Can SCCTAR be applied in CCM?
So I'm sorry, I'm not too familiar with that or too sure what that means.
And what is that acronym that you're referring to? Scatter?
Oh, scatter. Uh, yeah, so D5 scatter does not work on Cesium because again, it'll need actual geometry to be hosted on top of. So unfortunately, not at this time, but maybe that's something that our team can start to explore and consider.
Great. Question from Aldo. Is the AI passable? Is the AI pass able to get rid of the 3D tiling, or is it something that can be smoothed out in the D5 settings and viewport?
Yeah, so I think that's something that can be smoothed and the AI will take care of. And then if we go into Cesium, so I have just like a zoom interface button in there. But yeah, you can also try to play around with the tiling by enabling your LOD transition. So I would suggest playing around with these settings here, seeing which one gives you the best results, and then you might be able to get away with the tiling that you see here.
Right. What other questions do folks have? If that's all of the questions for today, then we can wrap things up. I'll deliver some closing words.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks again, everybody, for taking the time to listen in on this webinar. Again, I just highly encourage everybody to go ahead and scan this QR code and answer any questions there. It'll definitely help us improve our product. But with that, I can hand things off. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Chevry. And thank you all so much for attending the live webinar, Seamless Integration of Real-World Context for Faster, Smarter Architectural Visualization, a CE Strong webinar series powered by the Architects newspaper. This presentation was sponsored by D5 Render. This webinar is recorded and can be easily replayed using the same registration link. Please allow 7 business days to process certificates of participation and AAA credit reporting for this presentation. A big thank you again to our presenter, Jeffrey Espinoza, and to D5 Render for sponsoring this webinar. We hope to see you all again at a future event. Have a great day.